Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Her Inspired Mind podcast. This is Rebecca Fillmore, and I am here today with a very special guest. I met her through a networking event or networking group, I'd rather say, that I'm part of. Um, and I'm just going to share a little bit about her. Mary Knippel, she is the soul story writer, and she helps transformational leaders connect to their soul's calling and articulate it into the written word. Together, you craft and package their vision into professional credibility assets like books and blogs to grow their business, attract clients, and leave a legacy to allow their message to live on beyond this lifetime. Drawing on her 35 years of experience as a journalist, she has developed a knack for helping her clients get your expertise out of their heads and onto the page. Mary's on a mission to help women's voices be heard and to empower them to claim the story only they can tell. She is currently looking for co-authors for the collaboration book series written in her own words, and you can visit her website at yourwritingmentor.com. Welcome, Mary. Thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, I am so excited to be here. And after our last conversation, I'm thrilled to continue the conversation with all these wonderful people who will be listening. This is such a
Yes,
joy.
I am so happy to have you. Mary, where are you from?
I'm in Half Moon Bay, California now. I'm originally from Minnesota.
Okay. So we're in two completely different time zones speaking to you today, united with one mission, right? And that is
Absolutely.
to bring you women some hope, some encouragement, and empowerment. Before we, dig a little deeper, Mary, if you could just share a little bit about your story so that our listeners can get a little familiar with your life.
Oh, I'd love to. And when you were reading my bio, it was just like, wow, that little farm girl did that. And I'm already getting emotional because it's just like growing up, I wasn't encouraged to be a writer.
Mhm.
That wasn't realistic.
Mm.
And my mission is to help women's voices be heard. And I had to start with mine because I had worked hard to graduate from college. And in the industry, I was kind of dismissed as, "Oh, you're just a bored housewife. What are you doing here?" Yes, I grew up reading Irma Bombeck, and that was the kind of writing I wanted to do, talking about real life,
Mm.
where she talked about not only making the pot roast, she talked about burning it and how you interacted with people, and that's what I love, being able to encourage my writers to do, to become authors and sharing what they have learned from their life experiences and all of that wisdom that we gain from going through what we went through that made
Mhm.
us the resilient women we are.
Yes.
And so writing is my superpower.
Yes, I love it. I can't wait to read one of your books. And, speaking about your story, what is your story, Mary? I know you said you grew up as a farm girl, but I know there's more to you than that. What are some
Well,
things, difficult struggles that maybe you've gone through in life that brought you to speaking with me today?
it's being so always known as the shy, quiet one,
Mm,
and having to take the stand that I know I can do this. My family thought I was crazy when I said I'm going to quit work
mm,
and go to school full time while we were waiting on the adoption list,
mm,
and not knowing what was the cause of our infertility, and having to buck the system, so to speak, as um, the and I've always used writing as the way for me to shine.
Mm.
As a secretary, I'm correcting the engineer's grammar. as
Yeah.
as a writing mentor, I am helping draw out the stories of the women that I'm working with. And my memoir, The Secret Artist, came about because of the second breast cancer experience I had. It was just like, okay, it's time for me to not only get my stories out of my journals, it's to be out there helping other women tell their stories, because I wrote several. It's a series of essays, actually, and at the end of every one of my essays, I'm talking about. I'm giving you writing prompts so that I encourage you to start writing your story within the pages of my book.
Mm.
And then I have ghostwritten and coached so many women as part of anthologies, and it was like, oh, it's time for me to be an organizer, to be the compiler of my own anthology, so that I could take the women on the entire journey, to hold their hands and be there mentoring them to find the story that is meant to be told right now, and to get it all the way to be an Amazon bestseller. And I'm just like, okay, I'm 72 and here I am doing what I was born to do.
Mm.
And all along the way, encouraging anybody I talk to who says, I can never write a book. Oh, that's so much. How would I know what to say? And it's the first thing I do is just like, pick up a pen and set a timer for 5 minutes and ask your heart what it wants you to know,
Mm.
and just write. You have the story within you. You have many stories, because we've all had so many life experiences that have changed the trajectory of our life,
Yes.
from the frustration of not being able to find your keys in the morning when you want to get out the door,
Mm.
to to your husband or you losing your job and having to move cross country, or being diagnosed with a catastrophic illness, or someone in your family that has passed away, and you're just blown away because, how did this happen?
Mm.
They were fine yesterday and now they're not here.
Mm.
So we have things that have changed us, and the wisdom that we learned from that is what makes us resilient, brought us to be who we are, gave us new skills, and what that hope is what we can share with other women.
Yes.
That's the core of the stories that I I write about, and that I help the other women write about. Is that you have a piece of somebody else's story,
Mm.
and we have a responsibility to be out there. Yes, it makes us vulnerable and transparent, because I know a little bit more about you that I never knew before.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the magic. That is the beautiful thing.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. That's when I started my brand, Inspire Her Within. That was the premise. It was about women sharing their stories of struggle and triumph to inspire and empower other women. Because there's no worse feeling in the world than feeling like you're alone, than feeling like no one understands you, that you can't even talk to anybody because they might think you're crazy or, just look at you in a weird way, right? But there's so much power, like you said, like when we share our stories, we can help save a life. And like you
Absolutely.
said, it does take being vulnerable. It's scary, right? When you start opening, like
Hmm.
I know when I started sharing
Yeah.
my story, I'm like, oh my goodness, like how am I gonna share this story? Are people gonna look at me and judge me? But I got the opposite. I got women telling me that I inspire them, women
Hmm.
telling me like you help save my life.
Yeah.
Like our stories are so powerful. So thank you for being vulnerable, for helping other women to, share their stories um, and in written form, and to dig deep within. So I want to ask you, why do you think that so many women feel like they don't have a story that anyone would want to even hear?
Well, I mentioned Irma Mombeck before, that we're the caretakers. We're the ones who are in the background, making sure that everything else works for everybody else's life.
Mm,
And that feels so, oh, it's so ordinary. And what I really want women to understand is that that is your superpower. That's what makes you so extraordinary.
mm,
How you show up and lavish love on whoever is in your life.
yes.
And it may be an event that seems like, well, this is happening everywhere. Why would my talking about this be any different? And the difference is you,
Mm,
because you're the only one who knows your story from the inside out. You're the only one that knows the details and the impact that it had on you and how it changed you to be who you are. One of my clients, we were working on her her about page on her website, and on your website you can have all kinds of little little tidbits that you drop in occasionally somewhere else, but on your website you have this epic bio because you don't have a word count.
mm-hmm,
And so I always ask the question, tell me about the first job you ever had. And she wanted to talk to me about being in the industry that she's in and how the awards that, and and I said, no, let's go farther back to when you maybe you were a kid. What was the first job, first time somebody paid you? And she said, well, I babysat for my next door neighbor. And I said, oh, okay. How old were you and how old was the child? I was 10 and it was a newborn.
mm.
And as a mom, I would be skeptical of a 10-year-old being able to take care of a newborn.
Yeah.
And 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 I asked her, how did your neighbor know that you could do that? And she says, well, she saw me with my handicapped brother. Of course she knew I could handle it.
Mm,
And that was more detail that hadn't been disclosed before.
yeah.
And I said, that is the detail that talks about your character and how you could handle yourself as a 10-year-old and have a conversation with an adult to convince them that you could do a job. And she said, everybody babysits. No, everybody does not babysit, and it definitely doesn't ask for a job from an adult as a 10-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at a networking event, and she was on a panel, and they were all invited to introduce themselves and give a tidbit that isn't necessarily on their bio. And I said, here's your chance. You can introduce yourself. And she's, we're all professionals here. I'm not going to do that. And it would change their attitude about me. And I thought, yeah, it could. And so I went and sat down, and I was surprised that she did introduce herself and talk about the babysitting job. And afterwards, she came up to me and she said, there were so many people that I hadn't talked to before because they kind of thought that I was intimidating.
Mm,
And I said, oh, isn't that interesting? They saw your heart.
mm.
They saw you as a little girl who could take care of a baby and her handicapped brother.
Wow.
So the industry that she is in is sales. She's really confident
Mm,
about what she knows and what she can do. And to some people, that can be intimidating.
yeah.
But when she shared her heart, that was a detail that people hadn't heard before. And when they heard it, they saw her in a different light.
Mm,
She was more transparent. And we're all judged, and we're judging. So give people a reason to see your heart.
Mm. I love that. Give people a reason to see your heart. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, my next question is, what is a transformational story?
I think, and just my opinion, it's something that has changed your attitude, your behavior, your perception about who you are and the mission you are on in the world, how you are impacting the world. Um, when I had my second breast cancer diagnosis, it was very clear that I wasn't taken seriously because I wasn't getting what I was writing in my journals into a more polished professional form and sharing it with the world. So that's how the secret arts came about. I'm just waiting to see what happens after my third diagnosis.
Mm,
What is the message that I I don't know if it's going to be a TED talk or what it's going to be, but it's something that changed the trajectory of your life.
mm,
Something that made you stop and go, huh, what what more could I do? What
mm,
who who else can I be? Because clearly something happened that changed. Maybe it changed my body, maybe it changed my mind, but it definitely changed my soul.
mm,
Because because I don't feel different now. I don't feel the same now. I
mhm,
am different. And maybe it's something physical that your your family had to move from one state to another and you get a chance to reinvent yourself and you
mhm,
give yourself permission to do something that you haven't done before, to volunteer at with this organization, or you go in and give your time to this organization, or go to school and learn something. A transformational story means that you have said yes to yourself in being the best that you can be at that point,
mm.
because we're always changing.
Yes, I agree. I I think I don't know why recently I even feel like I'm changing from week to week. To be honest, I feel like I've been in this I felt myself change over the years, with the things that I've gone through, the things I've learned, the experiences I've had, the conversations I have. Um, and recently my husband and I, we went to Sedona, Arizona. And I was
Mm,
looking forward to that because every time I meditate, I literally can see. Well, I saw the Grand Canyon. I didn't get to visit that yet. That's another trip. But
mm,
coming back from that trip, I felt some transformation occurred, right? And changed. And, I love that. That's one way that we can share our stories because, like you said, like we could write so many books, right? With the transformations
yes.
that we
when
go
people
through in life.
yeah. When people say, I wouldn't know what to write, you have so many things. It
Mm,
just let yourself be quiet for
yeah.
5 minutes, build up that writing muscle, and your soul will tell you. You just take dictation. You don't have to
Yeah.
think about it. In fact,
Yeah.
I don't want you to think about it. I just want your hand move across the page for
Yeah.
5 minutes every day, and you'd be amazed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's powerful. And so, like, let's say there is a woman who's feeling stuck and she does want to write a story or a book.
Hmm.
How can a woman that maybe wants to write a book, how can she uncover the story that she's here to share?
Starting with the journaling, that's great.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody that does something significant, like running for president, holding a big office, anybody who does something like that seeks someone that has done what they want to do, I would suggest that they interview some coaches, find a writing mentor. Um, what I did as far as being a journalist, that was great training for me to ask, to learn how to ask really good questions.
Mm,
But I don't necessarily have a list of, oh, we got tick off the boxes. Yeah, we talked about this, we talked about this. I
mm,
might have some ideas about what's the core that we want to talk about. And I'm very intuitive, and I will listen for what people are not saying
mm,
and help them bring out the story that it has been waiting for the right space and the right time.
mm.
Because divine timing, you don't mess around with that. But
Yes.
I I love it when people say, I've I've never talked about that before, because something just floated to the surface and they felt free enough to talk about it. Or I will ask something specific and they'll go, nobody's ever asked me that before. And then they'll
Mm-hmm.
launch into something that they've been longing to talk about and they didn't have a container for it.
Mm-hmm.
So find somebody you trust and start start talking about, this is what I want to do. And because you have to know who you're going to impact with what you're writing about.
Yeah.
You have to have an idea of where your book is going to be shelved in the library or what categories on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Have, I mean, just like you were talking about, you know, doing your meditating, envision, have a dream, create a dream board,
Mm-hmm.
and and um, know who else is on the shelf at the library with you. Well, who is already writing these kind of books? And
Mm-hmm.
if they're not out there, think about why. Because you may be the leader that we've been waiting for to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
And then, most importantly, what do you want people to know? What do you want them to do? How do you want them to feel after
Mm-hmm.
they finish reading your book?
Yeah. Being very intentional.
Be very intentional. I want people to be inspired and empowered after they've read something of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I want people to know that their story matters
Mm-hmm.
and their story is the story that will make a difference to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And that, when you know your core message, that is something that is weaved in the weave of everything that you will write.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't wait for people to quote you back to you.
Mm. I love that. And I gotta say, Mary, I love your passion. It shows, it flows. You can see that you speak directly from your heart as the sole story writer, right? And, you know, I love the fact that you're so passionate because I believe in following your heart, and the fact that you are inspiring and empowering women to share their story is so powerful because, when you share your story, I don't think a lot of women realize there's so much power in it. Like when you just pretend, like you shared about your one client, like she's like, no, like how are people going to look at me? I'm this professional woman, like I don't want to share, my past of, but not realizing by being vulnerable and being real and being human and sharing that part of her life, she was able to meet a new group of people. And,
Yeah.
you know, I just love that because when we share our stories, there's so much freedom in just sharing our truth because it takes so much energy to pretend, to lie, to hide. But when you're able to just speak your truth, not saying that it's not scary because it can be
Yeah.
scary in the moment because we don't know what the reaction of others is going to be, right? And I think that most people worry about what are others going to think about
Yeah.
me? Are they going to
Yeah.
judge me? But Mary and I can both tell you that doesn't matter. Right?
Yeah.
Your story is more important than anybody else's opinion.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. 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 And when you were talking, I thought about two different women that have influenced me. And one was my speaking coach, who
Mm.
said, "Why hide from the people who don't see you anyway?
Wow, that's powerful. Say that again.
Why hide from the people who don't see you anyway?"
Wow, that's
Susan
good.
Kirby.
Mm,
And Maya Angelou would say, when I'm getting ready to write a new project, and I pick up my pen and I might take out my legal pad, and then I hesitate. They're going to find out that I'm a fraud.
mm,
They're going to find out I really don't know how to write anything.
mm.
And I think when we have that inner critic that's saying, "Who do you think you are? Why would anybody want to read your stuff?" And I just go, hmm, aren't we in very good company
Yes.
when somebody like Maya Angelou would have those doubts? And what does she do next? She writes.
Mm,
And that's what we need to do. And a lot of times I will make a joke and I will say, "Okay, I understand the inner critic can be pretty loud and annoying.
hmm
So what about giving them another job? What about giving them the list for Target, or plan the menu for next week and then go to Safeway, or clean the house? That would be a wonderful." Yeah,
Yes.
you go do something else. I'm writing, right?
Yes.
I am writing.
Yes. We can't let anyone hold us back from sharing our story, especially not our own selves. And I think sometimes we can be our biggest critics. We can hold ourselves back the most by overthinking. I think that it's important that when we have a thought and idea to jump on it, to do massive immediate action. I love Mel Robbins' book, The 5 Second Rule. Like we
Mm,
literally have within 5 seconds, like you can have a great idea.
mhm.
After 5 seconds, your subconscious mind will be like, no, don't do
Yeah.
it because of this. Don't do it because of
Yeah.
that. This can happen, that can happen. And then you don't do anything.
Yeah.
Right?
5, 4, 3,
Three,
2,
two,
1.
one,
I'm going
go.
back to bed.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are the two choices. Either
Yeah.
go or
I'm
no,
gonna
I'm gonna
do
just
it
stay
or
in
going
bed,
back to
right?
bed.
Yeah. And I think, you know, maybe I can speak for myself and so for you as well, because we all have that inner critic. We all have that self-sabotaging and um like you mentioned earlier, like that imposter syndrome might show up, but knowing why we're doing it and knowing that if we keep it to ourselves, that we could have been that person to save someone's life by sharing our story. It makes me think about this morning. I'm part of this group and we're doing like this 14-day push. And our coach was speaking to us and he was sharing a story about a family member of his that's a teen. He went through 2020 through school, through college, and he suffered immensely with his mental health and he was really
Mm,
struggling. And he confessed to him that he was feeling like he didn't want to live anymore. And he remembered there was another coach that struggled with those same feelings and those same kind of emotions. And he connected him with him. And now the young man is thriving. He's no longer in that mental state. But he was encouraging us like, sometimes we don't do things because we're afraid of how we're going to be perceived in the world and how we're going to be criticized. But the mission that we have, the things that we've gone through, the story that we can tell would be selfish of us to not share because someone needs to hear our story. Someone needs to receive the help, the value that we can share. because they might feel hopeless. But then when they hear us say, I've been through what you're currently going through, that can literally help save a life.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Some of the gals who were written in her own words, they hadn't written before,
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't know what exactly they were called to write. But when I, shared the concept of this is your story. That's why it says written in her own words. These are
Mm-hmm.
individual stories.
Mm-hmm.
There's no theme that, oh, you fit in this pocket, and that's why I want you to write this this many words. Um, it's and so the universe brought me these gals, and the synchronicity of resilience and talking about mothering
Mm-hmm.
that came through, and how uh, the how when that mothering presence is missing,
Mm-hmm.
how we see ourselves and what goes forward as how we mother. No, it was just, these words are so precious,
Mm-hmm.
and I was privileged to be a witness to help birth these stories,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just, that's why I feel I'm really living my mission. And I wanted to address what you had brought up, like that we have a responsibility. I like to give the analogy that you think about those beautiful tapestries that create, a beautiful garden, or when go to the castles in Europe, and there's some somebody on a horse, or something, and you think about all the threads that go into those tapestries.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what it takes to weave that picture. And if we thought about our story as being one of those threads, and what would happen if there were enough threads missing, part of that picture would not come to life. And so when we are vulnerable and transparent with what our story has been, then somebody else can get the whole picture of what they're designed to have,
Mm-hmm.
offering that hope of of sharing what made us who we are, so that they can see somebody else has gone through, if not the same thing, very similar. They
Yeah.
recognize themselves in us,
Mm-hmm.
and how far along we are, and they look, and it's possible. There's
Yes.
hope.
Yes. I love that. And I thank you, Mary, for being here with us today. Um, if there's a woman listening right now that you want to speak to directly, some just encouraging words, what would you say to her right now?
I would say that she has a beautiful story that someone needs to hear. And if she is hesitant about, uh, how do I start and what do I say,
Mm,
that she gets a notebook and starts writing 5 minutes every day, and see where the story takes her.
yeah,
Ask, what does my heart want me to know? And her heart will tell her.
beautiful. Thank you so much. And so, if there's a woman out there that has been thinking about writing a book, that has been thinking about sharing her story, how could she maybe get in contact with you if she would like some more information and direction?
I have a free workbook, the download, 3 Steps to New Author Success. It walks you through some tips, and you can go to yourwritingmentor.com/call, CALL dash Mary, MARY, and you can get right to my calendar and we can have a talk.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And are you on any social medias where they could connect with you?
I'm on Facebook, I am on LinkedIn, and I am on Instagram.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much. Well, Mary, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much, Becca.
I love this conversation because I think it's so important. And, I thank you for doing what you do, for being so passionate and helping women to not only share, but write their stories and leave a legacy.
Leave a legacy.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So, thank you so much, everyone, for listening in. Please share this podcast episode in your stories, share it with friends, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you could leave a star rating and review, I'd appreciate that as well, as it will help in expanding and sharing this podcast with others around the world. If you would like for me to talk about anything in particular or you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email at inspireherwithin@gmail.com. You can also connect with me on Instagram at Inspire Her Mindset and on Facebook at Rebecca Fillmore. Thank you for listening in, and I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless.